Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, and I am continuing my journey through these redive episodes where I originally reviewed these songs with a co-host, and now I'm doing them solo because, you know, your mindset is different when you're working with someone else. I might have heard things and forgot to mention them, or they might have heard things and made me think about them differently. So this is kind of a redive in the moment. Here's what I'm capturing in the song. Now, this is a song called Mistress of All Time from the album Sea of Light. I originally reviewed this with the band's social media director, or I should say director of social media, Dave White. He also runs Uriah-Heep.com, the band's official website, and Mick-Box.net, Mick's official website. He does a great job sharing the show with everyone and really keeping everyone apprised of what's going on with live dates and announcements and, you know, with the new album coming out and all. Fantastic guy on top of all of that. Obviously, huge love for the band. He's been working with them for a long time, and he's a great guest when he's come on the show. So I thought I would add this to the list, as this is one that I reviewed with a co-host. But first of all, welcome to Monday. I hope you guys all had a great and restful weekend. I want to give a quick shout out to Cakewalk by BandLab, Podbean, all the people who have left reviews on iTunes, my graphic artist Scott Lazinski, who did the amazing logos, Audionamics, who helps me keep the podcast sounding great, also Isotope. I use their declicker on this for any little pops and crackles that come into the audio, which, you know, when you're working even in the digital world, there can be quite a number of them. It usually takes out anywhere between like 23,000 to 50,000 minor clicks. Most of them aren't even audible. You wouldn't hear them even if you blasted the volume, but they're in there and it does a great job of taking it out. So thanks, Isotope. Also, Waves, I use their vocal rider, sibilance, and deep breath programs. And Sonatus, I use their compressor. And that is a program that is very specific to Cakewalk by BandLab. And of course, you know, everyone who's shared the show, thank you guys for doing that, for helping me get the word out. There is a new podcast, and it is the author of the podcast is Uriah Heep. It does not appear to be related to the band in any way. It is a book review podcast, and I believe they're getting their name from the David Copperfield character that Uriah Heep originally, the band, got their name from in the first place. So you'll see Uriah Heep in the podcast feed. Just you'll be able to tell very quickly by the titles of the episodes. They're all book titles, The Hobbit, things like that. So just be aware of that. That is out there. Don't get excited if you see the name, unless you're an avid book reader and you're interested in that show, in which I say go and check it out. I have not listened to it yet, but it looks like it could be very interesting for you book people. Also, I want to give a quick shout out to my brothers and sister at the Deep Dive Podcast Network. We have Terry T-Bone Mathley at T-Bone's Prime Cuts on the other side, Nate and John at the Deep Purple Podcast, The Simple Man at Skinnered Reconsidered, Rye at Sabbath Bloody Podcast, Paul, Joe, and David. You heard me talk about them on the last episode at the In the Lap of the Pod show. We have Andy and Matt at Hawk Binge, Eric and Jonathan at Maiden A to Z Pod, Daniel and Josh at Diary of the Madmen, the Ultimate Aussie Podcast, Ben and Sam at Universally Speaking, the Red Hot Chili Peppers Podcast, George and his new co-host Hattie at the Judas Priest Cast, Mark and Corey at And the Podcast Will Rock, John, Corey, and myself at Backtracks Aerosmith Revisited. I've recently joined that show, having a great time working with those guys. John and Corey also have another show, Backtracks Theme Music. I've been a guest on that show a few times, where they dig into film-related music. And of course, we have Clay and Rye at North by South, Greg and Jonathan at So Far, So Pod, So What, our Megadeth podcast, Kevin at the Tom Petty Project, Quinn at N Volume for All, Sav, Nick, John, and Mark at the Rock Roulette podcast, and of course, Brandon at Metallicast. And don't forget to check out Ace, Uriah Heep's manager, at his show Louder with Ace, which you can find on Stitcher, at YouTube as Ace the Music Man, and also check out GottaHear'Em if you're interested in the touring histories of bands like Deep Purple and Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Lots of great stuff out there. Also, if you go to my website, scotthaskin.com, click on the Uriah Heep podcast link, you will see links to every show, every interview, every song review, everything. Also links to merchandise, links to the band's, the members of the band that have Cameo pages where you can hire them to do messages. And, all of the guys that do that are they're going to give you their top quality, of course. Everything that you could want. The list of podcasts for the Deep Dive Network is there. It's all there. And you can also check out the links to my other shows. The Aerosmith podcast has a page there now, as does my other show, the Haskincast podcast, where I have interviewed other people in the music business, such as Graham Bonnet from Rainbow, Alcatraz, Michael Schenker and the Graham Bonnet Band, and many others. The interviews that I did with Uriah Heep originally aired on that show, and then I moved them over to this show. And I'm hoping to get another round of interviews with the guys for the new album coming out. That is in the works. We'll see how that all comes together with their touring schedule and everything else. Might be a challenge schedule-wise, but we'll see what we can do to revisit with everybody. I'd love to, chat with everybody again, get their thoughts on the new album and how the tour's been going and how everything's been happening since COVID. It would be great. So we'll see. Feelers have been reached out. It's again going to just come down to scheduling, I think. So let's dig right into our song, Mistress of All Time. As I recall, and I really wanted to go back and listen to the song again. I just haven't. I can tell you that this, probably more than any other song that I have reviewed up to this point, pops in my head at random times. The chorus, the way that Bernie sings Mistress of All Time, just that line, the flute. I mean, everything is just, this is a fantastic song. Definitely one of my all-time favorites. Let's do a quick rundown of our lineup for the Sea of Light album. On vocals, we have, of course, Bernie Shaw. On guitar, we have Mick Box. On bass, we have Trevor Boulder. Drums, we have Lee Kerslake. And keyboards, we have Phil Lanzon. So we're basically one bass player away from the current lineup of Uriah Heep, which is Davey Rimmer has replaced Trevor Boulder after he passed. And it has been a solid lineup since then. Currently on tour, if you are in Europe, keep an eye out for Uriah Heep's schedule. I don't have any dates as of the day I'm recording this in early December. I don't have any dates for America just yet, but keep an eye on uriah-heep.com. That's going to be your most updated place for links and things like that, and updated concerts. I see a lot of people asking random people in Uriah Heep forums, and I see this with other bands too, like, when are they going to play this place? People in the forums are not going to be your official, this is booked, this is on the schedule. That's where you're going to get, well, I heard this and I think that. Go to the band's official site. That is the place where the official dates are posted. That is going to be your best bet. Dave does a great job taking care of that. So uriah-heep.com. And if you can't find it, go to my website, scotthaskin.com, click the Uriah Heep link, and you will see links to that in on the podcast page. So it's all there for you. Now let's get into this song, Mistress of All Time from Sea of Light. This is a really interesting intro because that root foundational synth sound that we have does sound a little bit potentially ominous, doesn't it? But then you have these really bright little sparkles of sound that kind of make you just feel like these golden stars are just, coming out of whatever the object is that you're picturing. And it's really in contrast. And I like it, though. It's a nice short build, but it does have a a little element of mystery. And then we just have Bernie, who's about to come in, and it's just going to be Phil and Bernie as they open up the song, and it goes on. Let's check it out.
She dances on the seven seas, dances on the ocean. Sunlight on her golden hair, shapes of pure emotion. Her voice is heard like crystal words across the sky. She moves just like an angel. She's the mistress of all time.
There is such a passion in Bernie's voice. I mean, you could tell he's really envisioning someone or whoever it is that he's seeing created in this story. And he is really singing his awe of her. And I really like that. Interesting to keep note, and I'll try and keep track of this during the song. But here, because I remember having a discussion with Dave about this, and I remember talking to Bernie about this when I interviewed him, it is most of the time he says she is a mistress of all time, a mistress. But here he said she is the mistress of all time. I find that interesting. So we're gonna keep an eye on that. Because that certainly makes a difference as to what her role is in the grander scheme of the universe. If she's the one, what does that mean? Does that mean just to Bernie or the character Bernie is playing in the song? Does that mean she's the mistress to a small group of people, a large group of people, the universe at all? It could mean a lot of things. So those kind of phrasings can be very, very important when you're telling the story, what the actual meaning of the song is. And you guys know I'm not a huge lyrics guy, so I may miss one or two, but let's try and keep track of that.
Her sun pours down like liquid gold to chase away.
Now, I am not shy about saying this. I hate the flute. I hate it. And the reason I hate it is because, especially as an audio engineer, there are certain frequencies that a flute can hit that just pierce my ears, like literally imagining a needle or a pen or something being jabbed into my ears. And that's why I hate it. However, if it's EQ'd properly, it can sound pleasant. Now, a lot of times when flute patches are done on keyboards, especially back in the older days, it seemed like they really paid attention to that and they really EQ'd the flute so that it sounded good, but didn't really hit that kind of frequency that would be annoying. It actually sounds very gentle and soothing at almost any pitch. I'm pretty sure, if I remember right from my conversation with Dave when we first reviewed this song, this is Phil playing it on a keyboard. I don't have any listing for an actual flute player. And it does. It kind of falls in that range. But the samples are really nice because it does have that natural flute modulation that you would hear. It's not like a straight note. Like if you plucked a guitar string, it has some modulation to it. It feels like it's alive. So I think it's a great patch. And it's not unpleasant. And what he's playing, it's very simple. It's not technical. It's not difficult. It's not intense. And you don't need that in a song like this. What you need is something that's going to flow beautifully. It's going to complement what the singer is saying. He's talking about this beautiful, amazing person, and you want the flute to basically kind of musically explain her the way that Bernie just did.
The sorrows, her clothes are like a million stars made of tears and rainbows, and all the while her senses smile into my life. She moves just like an angel. She's a mistress of all time.
Okay, so here he's saying a mistress of all time. So we're now on that path, and we'll see if he goes back to the, or if he sticks with a from this point going forward. I really, I love this song. I love the feel of it, even up to this point before the band kicks in. It's just been Phil and Bernie for, a minute and a half already of this song. It's just been the two of them, and it's a very beautiful, elegant song. Really shows off Bernie's power. But I love that he's singing gently, but you can still hear that grit in his voice. And you've got Phil just playing these beautiful, smooth tones, backing him up. It's really, even up to this point before the band kicks in, a fantastic, fantastic song. And now it's going to get crazy.
Just like the
I really like that the band didn't kick in and try and overpower the song. They really are just enhancing it here. They're not coming in some explosive way and doing all kinds of crazy things. They're just basically coming in and adding to the flavor. I also really love the additional vocals that we're hearing behind Bernie. They just add so much character and so much more passion and power to what Bernie's singing. Very, very well crafted. Okay, so we are back to the Mistress of All Time again. So kind of just switching back and forth. And I find that interesting. I'm really curious what is behind that. But I can't believe I did this. I was so excited to get to the song that I actually misspoke in my intro. I said that we were basically one member away from the current lineup of Uriah Heep. That is so wrong. I can't believe I did this. Because Lee Kerslake obviously is not in the band. He passed away a couple of years ago, and Russell Gilbrook has taken his spot. So in this lineup here, we're actually 2 members away from the current lineup, but getting very close. This is still a very solid lineup. I apologize. I cannot believe that crept into my head, but I was just so excited to get to this song. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get through this because I really want to start talking about the song. So my apologies. That's why that happened. I have to say, too, I'm really impressed with the mix on this, especially in many of the previous albums. I've complained about the drums just not being present. You know, they're too soft. They're not really cutting through. I would love to get my hands on those albums and remix them myself. But here, everything is very, very plain and clear. You know, the kick drum's got a good punch to it. The snare drum, you definitely feel the crack of that stick hitting the head. You've also got the toms are nice and bright. I mean, everything is very, very present. Then on top of that, blending in the flute, which is a very difficult thing, especially with a rock band, because that sound just doesn't typically go with rock bands. I mean, not everybody is doing what Jethro Tull does, right? It's a very specific combination of sounds. So kudos to the engineer on this one. I think it's very, very well mixed. What a beautiful piano solo from Phil. I mean, I really feel in this moment like it really captured the essence of the song, very much what Mick would do in a guitar solo, where he's playing within the structure of the song, making it interesting, doing a great job covering for the lack of vocals here, where there would normally be a verse, but also not overplaying it and still playing something very interesting, very different, alternative to what you would normally hear over this part. So I have to say, double thumbs up on this one. As the music fills the universe, what a powerful statement that is. I mean, the visualization that I get from that is absolutely tremendous. And it really is something that I feel that's the same kind of passion that he's singing about this woman with. It's like, and I don't necessarily say that this is a love story, but it's like when you're in love, like everything that person does is greater than anyone else that's ever done it, right? That's just what love does to you. And I definitely feel that same imagery coming with this person. I mean, she is a mistress of all time, or the mistress of all time. Either way, a very important and huge person in this story and in this singer's world. Also, too, I'm starting to hear now that I'm, listening for more of the dynamics. There's some really nice stuff on bass going on behind that last part too. A little bit more dynamics, all in the lower register though, so you're not really hearing it pop through in the mix. But definitely some cool stuff there.
Dances on the seven seas, dances on the ocean, sunlight on her golden hair, shapes of pure emotion.
Listen to how beautiful that blend is on the vocals. And it adds so much thickness, but yet it doesn't add a hugeness to the sound. It's not like they're, panned in left and right ears and they put a lot of reverb on them. It's really just a great thickening of Bernie's voice, which is already, thick sounding with that grit he's got in there. He's got a great voice, but I love when he does this because it just adds another layer of interest, especially waiting until this point in the song to do it. If you do that from the beginning, it doesn't have any power. Coming in now as another added layer, it's like bringing another instrument in or changing to another part. It's something else interesting to listen to that isn't just the first part of the song being replicated, even if it was the same words.
Her voice is heard like crystal words across the sky. She moves me like an angel. She's the mistress of all time.
So I think we're back to a mistress, is I think what I heard him say there. It's kind of tight. I'm looking at the official lyrics and it does switch back and forth. It's hard to tell because they're so close vocally, and the way they're pronounced, sometimes the can be and you don't necessarily hear that TH, you just hear more the vowel sound of it. So it's hard to tell for sure, but just based it off the lyrics and what I'm hearing, it sounds like he's back to that. But another beautiful transition. Again, I was kind of expecting the flute to come back in. I forgot that it didn't because, again, I've only heard this song once, except in my head where it just seems to play whenever it wants, which is the sign of a great song. I mean, or I should say it's the sign of a song that's really connected with me, because if it wasn't, unless it was something horrible that I wanted to get rid of from my head, which is not the case, it certainly had an impact on me, why it keeps coming back to me. And it's so great to go back and listen to this again. Nice return to the flute without having it repeat that whole thing again. That's a nice change there. These sounds from Bernie, the O's, they're really nice, and I like the way that they layer in this part. I really like that. And I mean, it's basically the same thing that you would do with an instrument. You're just doing it with the voice, where you've got two completely different lines being played at the same time. It's like you're playing a riff over a riff that they both work together, and it's just crafted very, very well. But I love the sound of it, and I love, again, the engineering on this is brilliant, because you hear everything. Nothing is blended over anything else too much. Nothing is drowning out anything too much. The bass is just a little bit quiet, but because we've got that dual layer of vocals here, I don't mind that as much. I don't really think this needs much more low end. I don't feel like I'm lacking anything from it. It's great, too, that they're changing back and forth the parts. I mean, a lot of their songs would just keep repeating this part and then maybe have a guitar solo under it or something and then play it out to the fade. But I really like that they're switching back and forth between the parts. It's still moving at the same pace, but it's adding, something of interest because it's changing. Even though it's stuff that we've heard, it's just nice to have that back and forth instead of just that, let's just keep repeating this for a minute and 15 seconds until we decide to fade the song out. A very wise choice. It seems like this is a really mature song from a writing and performance standpoint. Beautiful how dead on, Bernie and Phil were, especially at that last part. I love that blend of that synthesizer and his vocal at the end. Perfect. And then, of course, we get a little bit of a return to the beginning with the digital chimes there. I really think this song should have been a huge hit. It's got everything you could want. It's got the passion. It's got the drive, the beautiful melodies, the flute, a lot of changes. It's not repetitive. I guess you could argue that maybe the end did go on a little bit too long, but the song's like 5.5 minutes, could have been cut down to a radio edit. Honestly, as far as I'm concerned, all biases for Uriah Heep aside, this song should have been a chart topper. No doubt about that for me, especially when I think of some of the things that are. This should have definitely been up there because this just grabs your heart from the very beginning and squeezes it and keeps it warm the whole time. And I absolutely love it. Definitely one of my favorite Uriah Heep songs. And I hope you guys liked it too. It's been great to go back and re-review this one. And now that I'm getting through these shows and things, I just don't have a lot of time to listen to music. And it's not that, okay, well, I've done the shows, I don't need to hear these songs anymore, because I want to really go back and revisit all of the albums, especially the ones that I didn't know that well until I did the podcast. But it's just I really don't listen to music that much because I'm busy creating my own projects and things, as well as my other podcasts, and now the third podcast that I've joined. So it's really more a matter of time than desire, but it is so great. I'm really glad I'm doing this season because this gives me a chance to really dig into these songs a little bit more deeply by myself. And I don't think there will ever come a day where I don't appreciate the beauty of this song. So great job, Uriah Heep. We'll see you tomorrow for another episode of season 29, where we're revisiting all the tracks that were reviewed with a co-host. Cheers. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show, and thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!